favor. Here is the candidate I personally strongly support for Lieutenant Governor, State Senator Ralph Northam.
Good afternoon. Hopefully everybody's doing okay. I know it's been sitting a while, but if you need to stand up and stretch, that's fine. It certainly won't bother anybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Anish, thank you for running. Also, thank you for your service to the Commonwealth and to the United States, and look forward to a great campaign. Just wanted to say a few words about what you all stand for and what you've done over the last number of years, but 2012 was a great year for Democrats, and I can't thank you enough for getting out there and knocking on doors and making phone calls and making sure that we elected Tim Kaine to the United States Senate and that we re-elected Barack Obama to the presidency. I can tell you that having worked with Tim in Richmond, there is no person out there that is smarter that I've ever come across. He is just a wonderful communicator, and he's in there for the right reason. So I think you all have done a great job making sure that he's in office. I wanted to give you just a little bit of my background and also talk a little bit about what Senator Webb has done for the Commonwealth of Virginia, especially for veterans. But I was raised over on the eastern shore of Virginia. For those of you all that don't know where that is, that's that little chunk of Virginia that's sometimes not part of the Virginia map, and we're working on that as hard as we can to make sure that we're included. But I went to the Virginia Military Institute and graduated in 1981. I left Lexington, Virginia, and went to Northam, where I attended Eastern Virginia Medical School. I then went off and served my country for 8 years. I rose to the rank of major. I'm now a pediatric neurologist, a child neurologist back in Norfolk, Virginia, and been taking care of kids for about 25 years. One of the things that I did in my military career is that I took care of wounded soldiers during Desert Storm. And I'm very familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder, with traumatic brain injuries, the things that our troops unfortunately are returning with. And I really want to take this opportunity to commend Senator Webb for his work with veterans. There are a lot of needs when young men and women who have served our country so bravely return. There are family issues, there are employment issues, there are health care issues. And, you know, I think one of the most important things that he did, and I say this because I went through both college and medical school supported by the Army, but he brought back the GI Bill. And what a tremendous success that is, and that's the least that we can do for our soldiers and our troops when they return. So I appreciate what he did. I would also mention, just in my background, I have a wife, Pam, of 26 years. She was up for a couple of the balls and enjoyed. I think she met a lot of you when she was up in Anish. She enjoyed visiting with your wife as well. Actually, Anish spoke at her school, which she remembers fondly. I have 2 children. My son graduated from William & Mary, and he's in his 3rd year at Eastern Virginia Medical School. My daughter is in her 4th year, her last year at University of Virginia, and my wife Pam and I are broke. So anyway, but we're very proud of them, and they've done well. But a couple of things that I'd like to just talk about as far as the issues and what we're dealing with in the General Assembly. I think, you know, of all the challenges that we have out there, obviously when you go around and listen to folks around the Commonwealth, they're worried about jobs and the economy. And one of the things that's most important for the Commonwealth, and I would list it as the top priority right now, is our transportation system and our infrastructure. And I know that's important for Northern Virginia, but it's also important for Richmond, Hampton Roads, and the rest of the Commonwealth. And what has happened, I've been in the Senate for 6 years now, and by the way, I'm from the 6th District, Norfolk, Virginia Beach, the Eastern Shore, and Matthews County. But what has happened with transportation, we all know that it's important. It's important for business, it's important for our ports, for Dulles. I mean, nobody argues against that, but year after year, people have come to the General Assembly with their ideas individually, and they're talked about, and people will say, oh, well, that's not going to work. I don't like it because of that. And so the discussion takes place, but then at the end of the session, nothing happens, and another year has gone by, and we haven't accomplished anything. So what my answer is to transportation, back in 1986 was really the last time transportation was formally addressed in the Commonwealth, and that was under then Governor Bilal's administration, and he formed a commission. And the importance of a commission is to sit down with a group of leaders that understand transportation, that can come up with what we need for transportation, and then come up with a plan as how to pay for it. In other words, how to find a sustainable source of revenue that will support transportation, and then take that plan to the legislators and then to the Commonwealth of Virginia. I really think that's what we need to do. I am confident and hopeful that Governor Terry McAuliffe, when he's in office, will do that, and we can move Virginia forward in a positive way regarding transportation. The second area that I feel passionately about, I'm a professor at Eastern Virginia Medical School. I'm a pediatric neurologist there. I teach pathophysiology. I can tell you that students come from many other countries, many other states. They are not playing for second. And we need to make sure that we continue with the quality of education that Virginians expect. And just a couple of things that I want to mention regarding education. I work closely with Governor Keenan. I feel very passionate about this. We need to make sure that all preschoolers have access to education. And let me just tell you why that is. As a parent and as a pediatric neurologist, and I think I can imagine a lot of you all are parents, there is a tremendous amount of learning potential in 2, 3, 4-year-old children. And so if my wife and I have the means to send our children to preschool, which we did at that time, and my neighbor doesn't, it starts the gap between the haves and the have-nots. So that's very important to, and again, we don't want to force people into pre-K education, but we should at least make it accessible if they so choose. As far as K through 12, the Republican Party has continuously underfunded K through 12 education. It is one of the, my pet peeves. Obviously, we want to get out of this bad economy. We want to get people back to work. We need to put more emphasis in the high school years on technical and vocational training. Obviously, not everybody's destined or wants to go to college, and we need to at least prepare them to enter the workforce. And finally, with higher education, we are blessed with great universities and colleges. One of my pet peeves, though, again, having seen both of my children go through public schools, I appreciate diversity. There's no problem with out-of-state students, but we as Virginia taxpayers really ought to have first dibs in our children getting into our universities and colleges. So the reason that doesn't happen right now is we're underfunding them, and so I think we can do better. Finally, regarding health care, that's where my background is. One of the things, if you all have been paying any attention to the news or the blogs, or the attack or the assault on women's reproductive rights. And last year, the Republican Party rolled into Richmond with this social agenda, and one of their bills was to make it mandatory for a woman to have not only at times an unnecessary but a very expensive medical test against their will. There is no reason, and I will repeat this, there is no reason that a group of legislators, mostly men, should be making a decision on what a woman should and shouldn't be doing with her body. And I will take that one step further. There is no excuse for a group of legislators to be interfering with the sacred relationship between a patient and her physician. So I worked last year against that. I worked this year. It was great to see Mark here. He's, by the way, Mark and Herring is my seatmate, so we keep each other straight on the floor of the Senate. But we've been working to repeal the ultrasound bill, the trap laws, and we will continue to fight that effort. As far as legislation that I have worked on regarding health care, Tim Kaine came to me a couple of days before I was sworn in 2008 and said, Ralph, he said, I like to go into a restaurant, and he said, I I have a lot of friends across Virginia that would like to go into a restaurant and not be exposed to secondhand smoke. And I said, Governor, I agree with you. He said, you know, you're a physician. You're a great person to carry this bill. We fought that fight in '08. We got that bill out of the Senate. It developed a little bit of a fever, as we say, on the House end. But we went right back the next year. And with help from people across Virginia, we were able to make that law. And I think that's been good for the health of the Commonwealth. I've also worked each year, we continue to work this year on concussions. Those of you that have children or are interested in sports, we have a real problem with children now who are suffering concussions and especially returning to play before it's safe. So I think we have good legislation on the books to make it safer for them. The last thing regarding health care that we've been working on, is obesity, is childhood obesity. And as you all know, about 1/3 of our children right now are either overweight or obese. You can either pay for it now or later. So I've worked on legislation last year, again this year, that will make it healthier to have more PE for these kids and to let them, you know, be educated to make healthy decisions, etc., so that hopefully we can all move together and make our kids a little bit healthier. So finally, the question that people will ask me is, well, Ralph, why are you running for Lieutenant Governor? What I have watched, I'm fine, thank you, sir. What I have watched over the last 2 years with the Republican agenda has been literally an embarrassment for the Commonwealth of Virginia. As you know, we have a 20-20 tie. We have 20 Democrats, 20 Republicans. The Lieutenant Governor currently is a Republican. But there are very important votes. We need that 21st vote, and I think that I'm in a position to be able to do that. I have fought hard for the last 6 years for the things that we've been talking about, for transportation, for health care, for women's rights, for education, for the environment, etc. And I think I have the experience to move forward. I would also tell you that when I ran in 2007, I ran in a very Republican district. There was an 8-year incumbent, and we were able to defeat him. Last year, the district got a little bit friendlier for Democrats, but still was a challenge. We were able to win last year as well. So I'm prepared to run statewide. I think we have a great message. I think that at the end of the day, we're going to have a great Democratic team. And I would ask you to keep the momentum going from 2012. It was a great year. I think we can do great things for the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I ask for your support this year. So thank you very much for having me here today. I'll be glad to answer any questions. It's a good excuse to stand up and stretch out, if nothing else. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Bruce Nielsen. Our Commonwealth has an opportunity to expand Medicaid coverage to many, many unserved or underserved low-income children. And I don't see much interest in doing this coming from the Republican majorities in our legislature. What is your position on Medicaid expansion, and would you explain, for the benefit of the audience that may not be familiar with it, just what that means and how that will help Virginia's children?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And just to let you know, I take care of children at the Children's Hospital at King's Daughters in Norfolk, and about 55 plus or minus 1% are Medicaid. There is no excuse that we shouldn't be taking care of our Commonwealth's most vulnerable. And so the Medicaid expansion, the way I would explain the importance of that is that the cost of health care has risen at a rate that far exceeds people's salaries. So there are a lot of folks in the Commonwealth who, by the way, work. This is not a handout. These people work, but their salaries aren't high enough to have adequate or even any health insurance. So what the Medicaid expansion as part of the Affordable Care Act is designed to do is to increase the coverage from 100% to 133% poverty level. And numbers-wise, that equates to around 250 to 350,000 Virginians that would be eligible for health care. Now, let me just say in answer to your question, there is no excuse, and I regret that the governor has made the decision not to expand health care because of those individuals that could be covered. But if we want to address the cost, and that's the biggest thing, that the cost of health care, the rising cost that's going to take this Commonwealth and the country to its needs, if we want to address costs and control costs, we have to have people covered. So that's an important concept to remember, because if they're not covered, if they don't have a provider, if they don't have a medical home, guess where they receive their medical care? They receive it in the emergency room. And what an inefficient way of having medical care given. No education, no prevention. It's really just a crash and burn approach to taking care of people. So with the Medicaid expansion, we could expand that coverage to those thousands of people. And so, again, I just think it's very short-sighted that our governor has made that decision. Now, Senator Barbara Favola, who, by the way, is dynamite, if you all are from Northern Virginia, if you all could send us 20 more Barbara Favolas, we'd be in good shape. But Barbara and I have been working this year together on a number of issues, the ultrasound repeal, but one of the main things, in answer to your question, is the Medicaid expansion. There's a budget amendment that we've been putting in, and also tied to that, which is important, is some Medicaid reform, and it's getting some traction. I don't know if it's going to happen this year. I hope it will, but anyway, we have been working on that issue, and hopefully at the end of the day we can expand Medicaid. So, if there's any other question, I'll be glad to. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on it, but that's kind of a general overview. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could expand a little bit more on your comments about having more Virginia students get into public education, exactly what you meant by that. You sort of said it was a funding issue, and could you elaborate what you meant by that?
Yes, sir. Well, every college and university, has a budget, and they have bills to pay. They receive a certain amount of funding from the Commonwealth of Virginia. In my opinion, we've been overfunding them for years. So in order to... Underfunding. Underfunding. What did I say? Overfunding? Thank you. I'm glad you are paying attention. But what happens, there are limits to how much tuition can be charged to in-state students. So what do they do to make up for the balance? They take more out-of-state students because they can charge higher tuition. So that's essential. I mean, it's just it's a business model. And again, there's nothing wrong. We like diversity, and that's important to have people from other states. But I guess the point I was making was that it'd be nice for those of us that pay taxes in Virginia to have first dibs at having our children enter colleges and universities. Thank you for the question. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I'll get you next. I apologize. Yes, sir.
Just real quick. During the Warner and Kane administrations, we used to hear all the time Fortune 500 companies moving into Virginia, Northrop Grumman, Volkswagen North America, companies like that. And I haven't noticed that lately in the past couple of years. What can the Lieutenant Governor do to help attract more companies like we used to get in the old days?
Well, that's a great question, and you're right, we do need to attract more businesses to the Commonwealth. And there are a couple tools that we have that have allowed us to have the status that we have. One is the Governor's Opportunity Fund that helps, and that, I think, on a case-to-case basis is good. We also have tax exemptions that can be used to help companies come in. But I will tell you a couple points that I would say are the biggest reason. I've noticed, I've spent some time up here in Northern Virginia, and I understand you all have a lot of congestion. You have a transportation problem up here.
They solved it. They put in hot lanes.
But the point I'm going to make, if you ever get a chance to come to Hampton Roads or even ride past Richmond, our roads are embarrassing. And so why would any new company or company from out of state choose to bring their business to Virginia if we're not able to take care of our transportation and infrastructure. And that's why I made the point earlier. I think it really is and needs to be our number one priority. The second point I would make is that the comment was made earlier about building prisons. If I'm a business owner and I want to bring my business with families and children, I'm much more interested in how good is their education system rather than how many prisons they've built. So it's all about priorities. And so you asked the question, what can you do as Lieutenant Governor? I think that one can use their experience. I know the challenges that we have across the Commonwealth. I have relationships that I've built in the Senate. I'm a physician, I'm a mediator, so I'm hopeful that I can bring people together, and whether it's a Republican idea or a Democratic idea or independent, if it's good for the Commonwealth of Virginia, then we need to have it on the table, talk about it, and move in a positive direction. Yes, ma'am, you had your hand up. Sure. You can use this microphone if you like.
Okay, it's me again. We've made one or two negative comments here about our Republican brothers and sisters. I may have made some in the past myself. God, these jerks! But I'm just wondering, what do you do? What's your approach to working across the aisle, and what can the the governor and lieutenant governor do to work across the aisle?
That's a great question, and I think it comes down to two things that are important for any relationship, and one is communication, and the second is trust. And we lost both of those last year because of the way they came in and reshuffled the committees when there was a 2020 tie. But in all fairness, we came back this year, I think, on both sides of the aisle with good attitudes. We wanted to work together. We knew and know how important transportation is. Got off to a good start, and then as Senator Herring said, last Monday they pulled this redistricting stunt, and now, unfortunately, a lot of feathers have been ruffled, and we're right back to where we were. So, again, I hope that through good leadership from Governor McCullough next year, and if I'm fortunate enough to have your support, that we can, again, listen to ideas, whether they're coming from the other side of the aisle. If they're in the best interest of the Commonwealth, we need to talk about them and move forward together. And, I think people are sick and tired of the bickering, the hyper-partisanship, and all of us, I think, need to work together and do a better job for what's in our best interest. Thank you for the question. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about the transportation package I'm curious about the rationale for the transportation package that's being discussed, where you get rid of the the gas tax, and replace it with a sales tax, which seems like it's thrusting it on the hands in the purview of people who may not even be using the roads, and it's subsidizing the people that are traveling through the state and would otherwise be. What is the rationale, and why are Democrats willing to go along with that, or are they?
Well, some on the House evidently went along with it, but there are none in the Senate that are interested in it. And a couple points that I was making, I think we're about to wrap things up, but any plan that gets rid of the gas tax as it is right now will never get out of the Senate. So that's number one. Number two, any plan that takes money out of the general fund, and the three biggest pieces of the general fund are education, health care, and law enforcement, any plan that does that is not going to get out of the Senate. And thirdly, I just think, we all need to work together and to encourage renewable and alternative sources of energy. And for people that drive cars such as the Prius that are using alternative energy, to put a fine on them, it's just crazy to go in that direction. So we all care about transportation, but we want to do it the right way. And so as far as the plan that the governor put on the table, I commend him for putting something on the table to start the discussion, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that. So we'll continue to work. And I think we're just about out of time, but again, thank you all so much for having me here, and thank you for your introduction. I appreciate it.
Thank you.